Good evening. You tuned in to Policy Matters on IntellectualRadio.com. I am your host, Jerry Brown, and we're just glad to be back once again. I hope everybody's holiday was pleasant, enjoyable. I hope we were thankful for the right things, and I hope those things continue for you. Well, this evening, we're going to kind of do what we had planned to do last week. You know, sometime we have plans to do things and God has other plans, but we're on the same page because these gentlemen have showed up here this evening, and we do have one guest on the way, but we're going to get started without them. We're going to tag tonight's segment of Policy Matters on IntellectualRadio.com, All Things Political. Reason for that is because everything is political. You know, from the time that you're born until the time that you die, politics as well as government controls your life. You know, one thing a lot of us don't realize is that you're not officially alive until a politician signs your birth certificate. And you're not officially dead, although your heart may not be beating, until a politician signs your death certificate. And everything between those two events is controlled, which politics controls government. You know, where you go to school, what the school teaches, the curriculum in the school, you know, your job. There's regulations by, you know, various government agencies that controls what your job, you know, what your job can and cannot do. Union matters, all of those things. All of that stuff is political. You know, we're going to kind of toss that around and see where we can go with it. I tried to be fair in who I invited here tonight for this discussion. Out a call, an open call for people who were in support of our mayor, his administration, and the Democratic leadership of this state. I got no bites, and I even sent out direct and specific invites to 4 Southside water organizations. I won't name them today because it was kind of a last minute kind of thing that I sent out. But this is not going to be the last discussion that we have like this, and I will invite them again. But if they don't respond next time, all the gloves are off. We will expose them for not coming out and stating publicly that they support what's going on. You know, and in my effort to be fair and to prove that, now next week I'm going to have Frank Coconut. He is probably going to be the Republican nominee for the Cook County Board President. He, like my guest and myself, is a disgruntled Democrat and has left the Democratic Party and decided to, you know, run as a Republican. So we're going to have him on in an effort to be fair. You know, and you know, I had pledged my support to him until one of my neighbors had decided to enter the race, I should say, Mr. Stroger, and someone who I grew up just a couple of blocks from and knows something about it decided. So I've got kind of an internal battle going on right now. You know, and as a matter of fact, talking about internal battles, that's where we're going to start this discussion tonight. But first of all, I want to introduce my guests. We have Mr. Jonathan Todd and Mr. Brian Mullins. These gentlemen have been very active in the civic and political things around this town. You know, if you're a person who media, you've heard, you know, their positions on a lot of things. It's not exactly in support of what's going on. I appreciate you guys showing up tonight.
I appreciate you having us.
Okay. You know, to get started, I'm going to read something and we're going to kick it off from there. This was written some years ago. Matter of fact, this was written in 1903, and it's so relevant. It was relevant then, and it's still relevant today. And it kind of talks about, you know, this internal battle that's going on, and we'll get started. It says the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil, second sight in this American world. A world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It's a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on him in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro. Two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. You know, this is something that we have to, as black men, as black people, every day before we walk out of our house. You know, we have to understand that we are Americans, you know, limited by what America has said we can and cannot do. And on the other hand, we are black people. And all that this country, this government has given to us has been afterthought. Like this piece here says, look upon with an amused contempt. You know, to go out into this American world, in the world at large, and compete with a person who doesn't have that ballot. By the time we walk out of our door, half of our strength, half of our thinking power has been drained just dealing with that. And then we're supposed to compete on an even keel. What do you guys think about that?
Well, you can go first.
I definitely agree, 100%. Let me start there. We are, as black men, we are charged with a lot of things. We have a lot of weight on our shoulders. And unfortunately, we are continued to be led astray of some possibilities. And we're talking about politics. We know that, as you started at the beginning, education, policing, housing, banking, every single aspect of life is controlled by politics and government. But voters, we don't know that this is affecting us. And so what we got to do is continue to educate each other in order to finally try to overcome some of the ills that we talk about. It's not about individual elected officials. It's about the systems that have been in place to keep us in a certain position. So
I do agree. I think it was Carter G. Woodson said it best. If the Negro continued to rely on the hand that pushes him in the ghetto to come out the ghetto. Exactly. So we have to, and that being said, we have to rely on our own inner strength and our collective strength that we have together. The trick is them thinking that, you know, teaching us that we don't have any strength, but together we do, collectively. You know, we're split apart, and the process of integration and telling us we can go to those schools and go shop at those stores and communities, and we got to get back to a sense of community where we used to be back in the early 60s and the 50s and different things like that.
You know, it's funny you talked about us not having any strength. Well, you know, the fact of the matter is that with us having this battle, we expend so much energy in this battle internally that when we go to fight, it's just that we're tired. It's not that we don't have strength. We're tired, you know, and it's not that we don't have it. You know, we don't have any strength. It's just that our strength has been taken away by this battle that we have within ourselves. You know, and putting this in a political framework, we have a tuneness right here in Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. We as black people are, you know, let me put it in this way. There's a phrase going around right now. What's in it for black people? Now, if you really stop and critically look at that statement, just that they're going to do something, and you know, and then, you know, an afterthought, you know, black people. Why should we be even asking that question? Should it, better yet, what do you guys think would be a better question than what's in it for black people?
That's a good one. You know what? I think first and foremost, we have to look and see the individuals that we got around sitting at the table. When I say that, it's collectively, we have to get back into the process, and the process being educating our people, getting them out to vote. If you think we're looking at the 30th anniversary of Harold Washington's death,
right,
and you think about those times that which engaged me into politics, times, you know, we was a force to be reckoned with. Take all of our wards, all of our layers of government, black elected officials, and we put them together, we can take and hold any office within this state, any office, top down, any office, we can control every that we live in. We can control every governing body from the clerk's office to the superintendent, and they took that structure away from us because they saw what it did, and they utilized certain individuals to do that. Well, those individuals still in place today.
But you know what took that away from them? They didn't so much take that away from them, but the question or the idea in our mind, what's in it for black people? Because now what we're saying is that they're going to make the decision. They're going to set the rules. Well, they have the standard, and afterthought, black people will be considered. And we allow that. We allow that. What do you think, Brian?
I think that ourselves is, what black people are we talking about? So one thing we never discuss in our own communities. All right. So you have black people that are happy to be on that. Okay. They're happy to have the jobs and get the contracts and working as principals and working different positions that the system allows them to. Okay. Other black people, right? So you have and we talk about, let's use, for economic, it's just black poor, because black poor is the one that everybody ravages upon. Everybody eats from social services or governmental agencies and everything that affects the black poor. So when you, first and foremost, when you say what's for black people, the first question you should ask yourself is, who's making that statement and what black people are they talking about, right? Because you ask me and try to do everything that I do politically and socially for poor and middle class black people, right? Because that is the masses that's the numbers, the large numbers. And that's the numbers that we need to wake up. That is the 70% traditional non-voters talks to, right? And we know, and we can get into that as we go, I guess, on why that doesn't happen and why we need to change it. One of the things Jonathan just touched on is the political power. The black vote is large enough to determine every single jurisdictional victory where black people are at. So state offices, countywide offices, we have the numbers. We just don't turn out the vote because the vote is really suppressed by the Democratic Committee. So the Democratic Party suppresses the vote.
It's funny you mentioned that last week, and you guys might have saw last week. I had took a look at some numbers, and they were somewhat dated. I don't think the actual numbers had been updated at the Board of Elections, neither the city or the county. But I looked at it, and of the registered voters in the city of Chicago, 67% of the registered voters are black.
Yeah. If I can pull this up, if I can get it up, I'm going to show you. I think,
you know what, that blew me away, because what we always talk about is what we are as far as population. We're about 31% of the population, but of the registered voters, we are 67% of the.
So you take that 67% and then you break it down to a higher number, to a lower number, and think about our disenfranchised with the system that don't even vote anymore. Yeah. You talk about the educated electoral blacks, whatever you want to call it, call ourselves at this particular moment in this, we can be something else tomorrow. But in saying that, it's only about a good 20-something% of us that votes every election cycle.
27%.
About 27%. Yeah. So there's a whole 40% of us that's not being tapped. I saw some numbers as well. If you look at the people, the individuals that just get Section 8 in any ward, it is enough to put any candidate in office if you can turn those numbers out. And the key is how you got to go back to the old school way of thinking. First of all, you got to give people something to vote for, because they don't have nothing to vote for.
Point. What, and I was going to ask that. So, okay, so we got so we got 67% of the registered voters are African American. Okay, we've only got 59 elected officials countywide. I don't know how many positions. There's only 59 black elected officials. Even with those 59, we have absolutely no say-so in the policy matters that take place in the city. State, we have no say-so in whatsoever. Those people that we continually send to these positions are people who will just go along and for black people, and for the most part, they're not even saying what's in it for black people. They're saying what's in it for me.
Exactly.
Exactly. And we accept that because in order for them to stay where they are, they include in their me that few little people that make sure that they get out there and do what's been going on for the last couple of months, like with these petitions and what's about to happen as far as getting these candidates out here.
Right. You know, you have to look at it. It's so many layers of that. So when you look at that, see, governmental jobs have been a pathway for African Americans or blacks to reach a certain middle class standard. And once they reach that middle class standard, their way of living. They don't want to step on those toes or they want to dance. So I'm gonna go along and get along, and hopefully they'll allow me to just keep on moving through the system. And I think what that also happens is it disenfranchises a lot of individuals. Like, man, this ain't worth it. You know, this ain't worth it. It ain't working for me. It may be working for him, but it ain't working for me. Right. You know, and I'm one of them individuals. I vote though, but I'm engaged in the political process, as we all know. But you know, I'm disenchanted with the Democratic Party. I believe we can take over the party. Right. We can take over the party and make it a party like a party for the people. Yep. By the people.
So I agree what he said. I mean, if you look at historically, starting in, I guess, the 70s, when it was hard for black people to get jobs in the private sector, then government jobs became a thing, from the post office to city, county, and state level work. What we need to realize is this is not a new thing, and they have been cutting black people's jobs out of government for the last 2 decades at least, right? Starting when Forrest Claypool went into the Park District and they privatized it. So they had a plan that they've been working all along, up through the demonization of teachers in schools. We see that happen in the police department right now. You know, most people look at this as these incidences. I look at it as this is the game. This is the machine itself purging salaries, causing the public to hate the government workers. You know what I mean? And so it's easier for them to close schools and downsize and things along those lines. To JT's point, what we see is that goes back to that battle I started talking about between different black people, right? Union workers, you work, you know, in your capacities. I don't have any of that. So it's difficult for me to sit back and be like, yeah, let's go ahead and let's vote for this $1 billion union contract or this, you know, TIF $50 million in TIF money. Cause I'm sitting back saying black people are not eating off of that. It had no difference in my life. You know, are traditionally discriminatory in the practices and racist in hiring and allowing people in. So when we see these public projects and the values are overinflated based on unions, I sit back and say, well, those are our tax dollars. And graft, let me be clear, not just you all, right? Exactly. But we sit back and say, well, what's in it for black people? Like, well, we get out of it, except they're using our tax dollars. Now, let me touch on one more thing they said when we talk about percent, and people don't understand those people. When you have a political campaign, and this is my opinion on why the 70% don't vote. Campaign, when you come up with the universe that you target to win after what's called triple Ds, right? People that have voted democratically in the last 3 campaign cycles. So every single campaign that I've ever worked on, there's been a bunch of them, follow that strategy, right? So you are only targeting the 30% that you want to come out to the polls. And you already know they go vote Democratic. It's usually not too many challenges on the ballot, the incumbent wins. If we can talk to and educate, well, all we need is 10% of the 70% because of the numbers are so large, right? You completely turn the cycles on the 30%. And so for us, what we're doing now, we're trying to talk to 10% of the 70%, get your butt to the polls, and it changes the whole dynamic. But that's, in my opinion, the reason why that disenfranchised 70 set out there. You sit back and say, my community's messed up, ain't got no job, hate the city, hate the mayor, we can't, nothing we could do, and no elected officials, no candidates to knock on the door and say, hey, what can we do to get you to come out and vote? What do you care about? What are your issues? Because they don't really want to answer it. So it goes back to having alternative political structures set up in our communities outside of the Democratic commitment and the Democratic machine. And we've never had that. I think 2015 was the first cycle that we really saw community organizing to come into play from different groups. Some of these liberal groups came into play. And I think that is the key to our whole liberation is to do ward-based organizing so that you have a different conversation going on other than what they tell you.
A couple of things about what you just said. Number one, yesterday, I was out at the Aldi's near 115th and Halsted, and a young fellow walked up to me and had his clipboard. He says, hey, excuse me, sir, you have time to sign my petition. I said, okay, your petition, what you running for? He says, running for the state. He didn't even know what he was talking about. I said, state what? I said, well, let me see your clipboard. So I'm looking at it. I said, okay, so she's running for state representative in the 28th district. Yeah, and here's this other one. He flips the page, and there's another lady he's got a petition for who's also running for state representative in the 20th. And I looked at him, and I tried, I don't know what to explain to him how this was a problem.
Right.
I said, first of all, do you know who the state representative of the 28th district is? I said, that's Robert Rita. He's representing the Black district, and he has been there since 1992. He sits on 4 different committees in Springfield. Not one of them have anything to do with the 28th district. He's heavily supported by a local 150, a union, operating engineers, and all 4 of the committees that he sits on mentioned the O'Hare Airport, where 150 guys are heavily needed, moving ground and all of that stuff out there. I said, if I had a DeWalt hammer drill, I wasn't going to get through that thick skull of this young man because he was only focused on getting that $40 a day.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And I said, you know what? He said, man, I ain't got no job, blah, blah, blah. I said, do you realize that by you doing this, you out? He said, I don't know who it was. He said, but it was some guy up there at the corner at the pizza place, and they was giving us some money, $10 to get us something to eat and to go out here and told us we get blah, blah, blah. I said, do you realize that he is putting these people on the ballot to ensure that the legitimate challenger is to take him out of the base? What we're going to have to do, and I don't know, and I want y'all's thoughts on this. I think what we're going to have to do in order to overcome that, first and foremost, is we start getting, and I think we're about to have a turning of the political soil, and the people who are voted in by this anti-vote that we're about to see, and I believe it's going to be significant, they're going to have to start putting pressure on the state government, and I believe it's the party in power who actually sets election laws and election rules, and in this case, it would be the Democratic Party. We're going to have to start putting pressure on them to change this whole nominating process.
Yes.
It's ironic. It's ironic that today is the first day that petitions are being turned in and stuff. But that's where we're going to have to start getting people, the proper people on them. There are people out here that would make great representatives of people, not just Black people, but white people, Asian people. There are hordes of, but they are, how do I say, they just won't get involved because of the mess that they would have to go through just to get.
It's a process. Right?
Yeah, the process is crazy. I'm considering running as an independent for a countywide office. The Democratic primary requires 382 signatures. The Republican primary, Republican Party requires 62. I have to get 4,125 signatures to get on the ballot.
Well,
that in and of itself tells a person that if you're not a Democrat or a Republican, you don't have a place in this government.
Well, it's funny you said that because this is filing day, right? And you've seen the madhouse down at the county, the madhouse down at Springfield, and and it kind of makes of our democratic process if you really internally look at it. But you also know it's called the Chicago Democratic Machine because this is when you see the machine work. The way it works, the challenges come out, these people being on the ballot that has no intention on governing and not even winning. They just on the ballot to throw the numbers off.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
these old tricks. You know, people pulling somebody's. They're living with NECA.
And they're doing it already.
And it started today.
They started pulling petitions today. I'm
Today.
like, man,
Yeah.
just 5 hours ago,
I saw that.
somebody already pulling. You know
yeah.
what it is? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know what it is? It's because there's so many challenges. They got a lot of work to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's and this is the process that we get that keeps this structure in play. And we got to talk about that. Even the way when our elections is held,
Sure.
You know, because you take some other states, they hold them in the sunny days.
What if we held it in July instead of cold or rainy? So
Right.
you can campaign and go door to door in summer and
Right.
spring months talking to voters to really get a real, but that's not what we do.
Right.
You know why?
And,
you know what I mean?
and you know, Daily.
1955.
Daily.
Richard J. Daley.
Daily.
That's right.
Daily.
Prior to that,
Daily.
our elections were held in the
Daily.
warm weather months.
Wow.
Yeah, Daily.
Richard J. Daley did that.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a funny thing. My brother was telling me, he lives in Memphis. He says that in Shelby County, Tennessee,
Shelby County.
it only takes 25 signatures
Mm-hmm.
for any countywide office. Now the candidate has to get those themselves,
Which is fine.
but it only takes 25 signatures to get on the ballot. Why can't that be done here in Illinois?
Well,
Why haven't we raised that question? Why haven't people who have run repeatedly and lost raised that question?
what we have to do is
There's a business.
we got to pick off some races. We got to pick off some races.
So let me say this. I think you're about to go there, but I'm going to interject because I was just on my tip of my tongue too. It is a cottage industry that's been created in Illinois. So getting petitions for people to challenge, to challengers, challenging petitions, all of it is probably a multi-million-dollar industry in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And they figure, why not? What do we have to lose? We don't care. You know what I mean? You'll be surprised to see the individuals process. And we're going to work hard to expose everybody in these processes. Everybody that pulled the signatures, some of the candidates we like, we'll see with your signature. We may just walk up to your door while we on live saying, hey, why did you challenge these signatures? And you know the person that does the challenge,
Right.
I mean, they kind of don't really know what's going on. They straw people, right?
Yeah, they straw
so
people.
we'll put a camera in their face. Why did you challenge these petitions?
Right.
Close the door in our face. We can laugh at them.
That happened with us.
Expose them. So,
That happened with us out in the 8th Ward last time.
yeah.
When-
Just a
when-
random person, right?
When we did go to the door,
Right.
didn't know what we were talking
Right. Even better, right?
about.
Yeah.
Didn't know.
Random.
But in the process,
Sure.
we doggone near had the 8th Ward committeeman put off the ballot because we had over 900 of her signatures excluded.
Wow.
Excluded. So that in and of itself kind of tells you that's another problem, with this fraud.
Yeah.
Back in what I read today was from the Solar Black folks, W.E.B. Du Bois,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about the Revolution of 1876. After 10 years later, after that, the black, and then the 15th Amendment, we got the right to vote, and then we had this horde of black people primarily in the southeast section of the country and down in Mississippi and Alabama. A horde of people were being voted into the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and by fright, that was flipped around. And by 1896, with the Plessy versus Ferguson decision, there were no black people left in Congress. And the next black person in the Congress was Oscar DePriest from here in Illinois. So that's really sad. So and the reason I brought that up is that the same thing is happening today.
Yeah.
It's just it's the same game. It's just got a different face on it.
So I want to touch on one of those. What you're going, the Board of Election, right? And if most people don't know, the Board of Election is a agency of government. It's a government agency. The Cook County clerk, who is currently today David Orr. Everybody would tell you David Orr is a reformer. David Orr, he's the most clean person in government. Well, I sit back and say David Orr's office is not that clean because we watch his employees use tactics and lean towards Democratic candidates. We were in a challenge process last year where we turned in, I think they needed 600 petitions. We turned in 1,200, doubled the amount. We went door to door with voter data. We knew We were very comfortable
Right.
that we had 500 additional good signatures. By the time we left out of there, in a court case, sitting there with the Board of Election employees. The other person is calling for the town. I'll be like, what are you? It's clear as day. It's the exact same signature. But those employees, then as you move up the chain in the appeals process, we ended up with the Board of Commissioners. So we ended up with the commissioners to make the decision, right? It's 3 commissioners. So we were challenged. We had 5 Democratic officials, Jack and Eddie and Mike Casper and 3 more of their lawyers. That 5 lawyers of the Democratic Party to kick this guy off the ballot, right? And we're sitting there, and we in a room with the commissioners. As Mr. Casper and Jack and Eddie, we know how you all play. We know what you're doing is wrong. So I'm going to vote with the challenger. This older white lady, I can't remember her name. She says, some little crap, and she sided with the machine, right, with the party. The young black guy, I can't remember his name now. Maybe you all know. He's been on the board for 2 years now. Maybe young black guy. Well, I'm new here, so I'm going to go with what she said. And that's how we got kicked off. That's just how it went. Because he said, I'm new, I don't even know. Right. So this guy, the candidate, spent probably $20,000 in this process before the election started. You know what I mean? He ended up going to court, but ended up just dropping it because it was too much. It was too much. Spent too much money and energy just to get a chance for the voters
to make a change,
to make a choice, give the voters a choice. And if we start looking at it from that choice, the democracy that we all claim or that we are believing we have, that's a great point to start at, saying because we know we don't have it, even though
okay, so we've spent the majority of the time here talking about the problem. We've gone into it kind of deep, and so let's kind of shift gears here and talk about where do we go from here now. For the next 14 months, starting today, for the next 14 months, the future of black people, and I mean it's the future of black people are going in this town, in this county, in this state is going to be determined. March primary, the November election, municipal election in February of 2019. We know what the problem is. We know we have to get people who have not been voting. We know we've got to get people who aren't registered to vote. What is it that we have to do? Those of us who know, what is it that we have to do?
I think, first of all, you have to have a good candidate. Yeah, a good candidate that can galvanize the people around the issues and talk to the people individually and touch what you need to hear. I like to say I throw my bills up like just, and when they come down, I pick which one I'm gonna prioritize, which one I'm gonna pay, and then get to some of them, and some of them have to get to the last of the list, and a couple of them may even get that phone call. So I think we all share the same issues. We got to get the candidate policies together. We got to get a strong operation where we engage that electoral that's not being engaged. We got to not go for the same tricks. When I say the same tricks, the endorsements that we get or we spend so much time trying to get, nothing. Or we trying to go to this particular church and really don't mean nothing. What happened? What happened with the separation of church and state, which our government was founded on? There's supposed to be a separation of church and state, and what they did, and that's another trick that they use. You take in the 60s when the church was used to organize people. Now they use the church to hold us back.
Right. That was all calculated.
Yeah, that was calculated. Yeah. That was calculated. So we have to engage them people, those millennials that just, hey man, I don't see it working for me. Go to school, I go to school and can't get a job because after I come out with all this debt, we got to change a whole system that's been in place for a long time. What I like to say, we gotta wash people's brains because we've been brainwashed.
Right.
And in the same token, we need a slave revolt. We need Nat Turner.
Nat Turner for governor.
Right. That's what we need.
I'm your candidate.
What do you say, Brian?
It's okay to plug some of my own stuff while we're here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is my question and a model we're trying to follow. We have a couple things that we're doing. First is the Black Voters Project, which is surveying, right? So we've done community surveys. We've done them in 3 wards right now. We're up to like 4,000 door-to-door surveys. And the Black voter. So we, as you know, messaging is important, right? We all believe we know, but we need to know that we know. So polling is important. We happen to have the facilities and the ability to pull this off. So we still working on this. So once we understand what the Black voter wants, we now have to find, how do you push the issues, right? I think we do it a little bit backwards. We let a candidate come in and tell the Black community, lying,
right,
what I'm going to do for you. But they lying anyway. But they come in and say they're going to do this. We need to get our ass together, from the people. What do you want? What do you want to see issue related? And then you take that to the elected candidates and say, who's going to do this? And then we try to hold them accountable from that point, right?
Form the policies.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And the second thing we have organizations, citizen civic education. And what we're doing now, yesterday, probably go out tomorrow. We're looking for ward organizers. The structure of the democratic system, when you have ward people to reach the voters, I believe is the right structure. Problem is, it's people. It's the Democratic Party, right? Okay. So for us, we want to find those individuals, help empower them to understand their precincts, their wards, so that when election time comes around, so let's say in a mayoral cycle, right? Now, in all the Black wards, by the time we're doing the voter file data and, online presence and other things like that, by the time August comes around, you already have 20, 25 volunteers in your ward that'll go out and get your petitions door to door, that'll help volunteer for you in an election. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now we're cooking with something.
But
you know what I mean? So that's what I think we've never had in a grand scale, definitely collaborative. Now, we do have fringe groups. Not one name, of course. Reclaim Chicago's, the Action Nows, the Souls, the United Working Families, all these other groups that come around. They really ain't for us at the end of the day. Even though they got Black faces and Black executive directors, they're not for us, right? So we try to build our own Black. So
let me ask this. Seeing how we need to rebuild from the bottom up, would it be safe to accept detractors or those who claim to be disgusted with the status quo? Would it be safe to accept them into this process of turning this political soil, or are there enough who have never been part of the process out there that we can get out and galvanize and go against it? Are we savvy enough? Are we politically savvy enough? Those of us who are involved in organizing, are we savvy enough to be able to say, okay, this person's for real, or should we just totally, ignore them and move on? Now, I will say this. Now, all 3 of us have the same goal. All 3 of us have different methods, and one thing I lean on is that Malcolm X told us when he and Dr. King sat down, he says, we should never argue over method. Saying. Now, I know you guys, and I know all 3 of us have different methods on going about this. Right. My thing is, I don't want to have nothing to do with none of them. If you was over there last week, stay over there. I don't want you over here. I don't want nothing you got. I don't want your help. I don't want your money. I don't want your support. Don't even put your name in my mouth put my name in your mouth. Right. Now, you guys got different approaches to it, and individually they have been successful, not as successful as we want them to be, right. But somehow we're going to have to incorporate that. But are we at a place that we can just totally, since the majority, we got this, this love affair with the Democratic Party, are we at a place that we can just say, if you're part of that structure, we don't want to have nothing to do? Are we at that place?
I think several things, and so I'm gonna try to tackle as much as I possibly can. Several things in a short period of time.
Yeah, I was gonna say we only got about
a short period of time. Several things. Well, we need individuals that understand the machine that we need to put a spoke in the wheel, first and foremost. You know, so second thing about, we also have to be strategic in who you align yourself with, because there's a lot of individuals out there that do the organizing and do the riling up and different things like that. And you look at them, you know what they are? They communists. Real careful and not tap yourself organization, because it's a lot of them out there.
Which took place in 2015.
Yeah,
and Quantum Donald movement.
Yeah,
the communists came in hard,
and you listen to them and you like, I'll be doggone.
So we want anarchy. We want any government. I'm like, no, ain't that far. Like, we want to get rid of the police department.
Right. I told a buddy, man, I said, hey, we need to back up. These they talking about communism.
Yeah.
You know, and so if you don't know what you're listening for,
right,
you can again be misled. Right. So again,
is that where we come in?
I think we have to have strong individuals that know the process, that are willing to put together a good, solid team with people that got the data, with people that know the process, with people that's disenfranchised. And we also looked at, and Brian, no, we looked at different parties, you know, and like you looked at a different party, they stacked the deck against us, you know. We looked at taking over parties, but then some parties ain't never been for us and ain't never served us, and we ain't
can't go that route.
Can't go that route.
Right,
so I think what the key is for me and my thinking is pick off races. You know, and I'm saying this live right now, and I guess y'all know.
Okay.
So we pick off races, and we change the structure of the Democratic Party.
I think that's a tough question, actually, because I think the only, and I'm a perfect example for that question, right? Okay. Like any sitting elected official, zero. One. I can't pick one that I say, you know what, that's a good elected official. Right? None. Right. Of any race. Right. Of any race, right? To start with. When you talk about the black ones, you could double that, because ain't none of them doing anything. Zero, right? The problem comes in is money. Okay, so when you say money for elections, money for campaigns, money for whatever it might be, right? So some people make their living off of the government via contracts or things like that. I've made a few dollars off of it, not very much. More, right? Didn't work out. So I think that comes into play. To answer your question, I think we need our own scenario without any current existing person that's been involved in this stuff, because it's hard, except maybe because you don't know who to trust. Now, most people, we are more savvy because we've been around. We recognize the frauds and the fakes. In my opinion, most black voters don't recognize it.
They don't.
And so we have another layer. Not only we got to get the incumbent out, we got to fight the next layer of disinformation before we can get to the voter to tell the truth. You know what I mean? And so those are layers they keep putting in front of us. So I guess the ultimate answer to your question, yes, we do need to dispel 99% of the people that have been around, because we know it already. So it makes no sense to act like these people go wake up and change.
That's back to my theory about a slavery vote, because Nat Turner, one of the first things he said when he say who are willing to do something, and everybody step forward, and he say who willing to die, a couple more step forward, and then he said first thing we got to do is get rid of the ones that didn't move.
Right.
So that's where we at. Okay. That's where we at. So that's my point. That's my point. We need a slavery vote.
Right.
You know.
All right. And they not ready for a revolt. They're not ready.
You know, actually, we read.
Right.
They don't even believe the revolt is possible.
Nope. I agree.
They're constantly telling us. Our friend is always saying, okay.
But
anyway, in our last few minutes, two things I want to get out. Now, first of all, we're talking about picking off 2 races. We're not going to win them all. We're supporting. Okay, all right.
I'm with you. We about to take it down.
Okay. Right? I'm gonna win one.
There are several people that are, I call them anti-candidates, position themselves as anti-candidates. Is there anybody that you guys right now, before the real election starts, that you're willing to say publicly we should all get behind and ensure that they get the maximum out of the black vote?
You
can.
I am going on record and publicly saying that you all should get behind the key ticket in the gubernatorial race, which is Bob Diver and Jonathan Todd.
Okay.
This is the first time in history that such as myself from the west side of Chicago, in the community, coming from where I come from in Austin, to be tapped for government.
Okay.
We can change the existing structure of government with this race. So yes, I can say wholeheartedly, you can get behind me.
And to piggyback on that, I just want to say this real quick before we get to you, Brian.
Sure.
That I was at that governor's debate out at Chicago State. I think that entire crowd, and that room was packed. I think that entire crowd was shocked at the responses Bob Diver gave to those questions. That man was on point. He was on point, and he just doesn't have a vehicle to get his message out. If he had Daniel Bliss's ability to get stuff out, if he had anybody else,
win.
Okay, it'd be hands down. I was shocked at how the people responded to him. You know, so.
Well, I want to wait till we see who on the ballot other than JT. So
okay.
JT gets my vote.
Okay.
So, you know.
We gonna be on the ballot.
Okay, real good.
Right. So
we're gonna be on the ballot.
Because we don't know, and I hate to speculate because that's one of the things we do. It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
If you come out, try to endorse or talk about people, and then they get kicked off ballot a couple of weeks, it's all for nothing. Now, there are people I like as individuals. Are those individuals going to be great candidates or sustainable candidates to win those elections? Those are two different conversations. I think some people are ready to make those moves, but are they take out, and move these big beasts? Looking at the 25th ward, it's 7 people. 25th district.
That's right.
Man, it's 7 people filed already today. That's just today. That's man, just today. Maybe around with 10 people. Now that's just so. Yeah. But it's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
And you know what? And that's the thing. I think as many people filing, that's good for our democracy.
I think it is too.
It's good. That means you know what?
You got to work
20. You get 20 votes and get in.
And let me say this. I know our time is going short, but let me just address the last thing on this point. To politicians and elected officials, right? In our brains, we think they're smart. We think they know what they're doing. Most of these elected officials are dumb, and most of them dumb, and they wouldn't make it in private practice.
That's why they're
anywhere. But they get appointed. I think most of the black aldermen, probably most, have been appointed a black alderman.
13
out of 18.
13 out of 19.
That's crazy. So 13 out of 19 were appointed, right?
Appointed.
So they were not some intelligent plans and what they go do for the community. They were given
I call them come off the back of the garbage truck.
Exactly. I think Donald Trump, hate him or like him, he is the anomaly to sit back and say, we holding people to a standard. Like, you got to know what you're doing. You got to have every answer. I don't have the answer. So I think it's almost unfair when the candidate is asked, how are you going to fix this state, the $100 billion state pension deficit? You're like, I don't know. I don't know. Do anybody else in the world? You know what I mean? What you asking me for? But that's a reality.
That's the reality.
I mean, at the end of the day.
Man, this has been real good. Our last 5 minutes here, this is something I want to deal with. Probably been the biggest divisive thing that the powers to be used.
Sure.
And that's at the table.
Yep.
Everybody wants to get at the table.
Sure.
We ain't never got a table. We constantly going to somebody else's table.
Right.
Usually when we sit at their table, if we're lucky enough to get a plate for human consumption, how do we take away the beauty, I'll put it that way, of going to the table?
First thing, let's go to the statement, at the table. So it's, again, you get to sit at the table with the powers that be to do whatever it is you're talking about. Whatever it is you're talking about, they got the ability to do it already. They don't need you, right? But they bring you to the table to give you that illusion that you are giving some input to the scenario, right? Mm-hmm. If we look at contracting at the state, city, county level, from construction on down, we are at the bottom of the barrel. I think the state of Illinois is at black contracts at like 2%. City of Chicago came out at 8%. You know what I mean? So we've been at the table. So we've been at the
City of
table.
Chicago was 3%.
It doesn't.
It's even less now than it was under Daley.
Exactly. And it doesn't work at all. We need to get rid of that phrase. It's just a waste of time and energy and everything because it doesn't work. It could work if anybody wanted it to work. You know what I mean? But nobody has that interest. The people that get to the table, we give you an example. Talk about the Urban League. I put on social media today. I saw the Urban League is having an event with a talk about millennials with Susanna Mendoza. And I'm sitting back, and you know what I mean? I'm like, why? First of all, she don't know nothing about millennials. Second of all, why are we having an Hispanic woman come in and talk to black young professionals about anything? Yeah, well, my take is because the speaker told Urban League, look, you want to kick some of them grant dollars for training and all that, you need to bring our girl into the mix. And it's part of a bigger strategy that we didn't have to talk about, that urban is turning into Hispanic, black and brown. So the word urban anymore. So we need to look at the Urban League differently because they're not for black people. I don't know if they ever really been, but they really not now.
Jonathan, at the table.
At the table, I think we never get at the table. We get under the table and get some crumbs.
Get to serve.
Get some crumbs thrown off the floor, and that's why we and rats with those crumbs. That's my take on it. I think it is an illusion. And then when you get at the table, when they bring you to the table, so happy to be at the table, we forgot the reason why we got to the table. So, you know, and when they pull us to the table, they know that. So you got to have a strong-minded. I was talking today, and it all breaks down to this: morals, principles, and values. You can't lose your morals, you can't lose your principles, and you can't lose your values. You know, and I'm gonna end with this. And it was the greatest quote I think I know by, is that the true measure of a man is not where he stand in time of comfort and convenience, but where he stand in turmoil and controversy. That's it. Yep. That's it. And
gentlemen,
that's Martin Luther King.
For coming in. We're gonna have to do this again. We're gonna have to expand this group because there's so much more we need to talk about. Sure. You've been listening to Policy Matters on IntellectualRadio.com. We've had Brian Mullins and Jonathan Todd here. I'm your host, Jerry Brown. This has been one very informative show, and we're going to do this again. Next Monday, we're going to have Frank Okonet. He is apparently going to be the Republican nominee for the Cook County Board presidency. That ought to be a real interesting show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Radio voice.